What's up, everybody? So glad to have you all here for our second official Lunch and Learn. We've got some folks hanging out with us online. We've got some folks here at the Show It offices. And so we're excited to be here today to talk all about forms. In case you were wondering, this is forms 101, 102, 103, and 104. If you are looking for the non-form classes, you're in the wrong building. Just want you to know that. Hey, a few things to just kind of set up before we get started. Number one, we will have some Q&A at the very end of our conversation. So if you have some questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We've got JT and Jefferson who will be kind of collecting some of those questions and answering them if they're quick and easy, but maybe reserving them if it takes a little bit more of a descriptive answer. And but keep some of those questions for the end as well, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. Another thing is this is being recorded and it will live on in perpetuity on our Circle platform. So if you're watching this from the future, hello from the past. I'm not sure what's happened, but I hope things look okay where you're at, and hope that this is helpful to you. So we wanted to do a little bit of a hybrid on this Lunch and Learn. For sure, we want to cover some of the more practical things. So things like how to set up a Show It form, or if you want to get a little bit deeper into things, maybe how to set up some forms on the WordPress side of things. But I also wanted to take some time and just talk about like a 30,000 foot view ideology of how you should approach forms, because it's something that I see a lot of designers think about way too late in the process of building their websites. And if you think about it, forms on a website are the most important thing, right? Like they are the thing that we all hope people come to when it comes to a website, right? Like as much as like content is great, branding is great, good imagery, good fonts, load time, all that kind of stuff is really good. But if a user doesn't end up making it to a form and then filling that form out and submitting it and it all working like it was supposed to work, like it was a lot of work for really not a lot of payoff, right? So forms are the main point of what you're doing for your clients and what you're doing for yourself. And so it really should be something that you kind of become a student of how to do them well, how to approach them well, how to make sure that you don't make it difficult for people to fill forms out or don't make it confusing. And we'll kind of talk about some of these things in a little bit more detail. But the whole point is, you can't let forms be an afterthought. They have to be something that you're thinking about at the very beginning, and you are testing, and then you are going through and looking at how the results are coming out after people have started using those forms. Because you don't just want to set a form and be like, okay, good luck, go have fun. Hopefully this works out for you. You want to look at things like, are there places in my form that people stop filling out the rest of the fields, right? And so you have a form or a cart abandonment. You have to look at things that might be messing people up as far as how things are phrased. So there's a few things that you can do to make sure you test, you get some good analytics back, and make some decisions moving forward. So there's a few questions that you should always be asking whenever you're creating a form. And when I say form, just to clarify, this could be anything from newsletter signups. It could be contact forms. It could be a shopping cart form. So shopping carts are also forms, right? You're filling out inputs and fields. And so all of that would be under the category of forms. So there's a lot of psychology based on all of those things. And there's a lot of technicality as well. So the main questions that we want to ask. The first one is, what's the main purpose of the form? And this is something that I see a lot of designers get wrong. They lose their way as to what the main purpose is. And so when that happens, you add a lot of noise to the form itself, which makes it difficult for people to actually follow through and fill all the way out. And so the main purpose of the form might be to contact you, right? And so very simply, all you need for somebody to contact you is either a phone number or an email, maybe a first name, maybe not, and then either some type of brief message, sometimes not even that, right? But on a simple contact form, you'll see things like, when was your birthday? And what's your street address? And, how many fingers am I holding up behind my back? Like all that stuff that doesn't matter, that actually keeps people from actually following through and filling out the form. And the same is true when it comes to any type of conversion question, because that's what this is. This is a conversion question. Are we going to convert this person from a non-form filler outer to a form filler outer? So in all of conversion, you have to ask yourself, what is the main purpose of this thing? It's true with web pages as well. I see so many web pages that have so many distracting calls to action that you forget what the main purpose is. So somebody shows up to your homepage and it's sign up for my newsletter and buy my course and read this blog article and, tag somebody in an Instagram post. And so by the end of it, you leave the user going, I don't know what to do. And so rather than make their own decision, they just choose not to do any of those things that you've asked them to. I like to say that confusion is unkind. And so you want to be really clear about what it is that you are wanting the person to do, and then let that dictate what you are including in the form and what you are not including in the form. The second question is this: what stage is the business in? This is an important question because this might make you include or not include certain things. So particularly when it comes to lead generation. So you've got a form where somebody's interested in hiring you for a service or hiring a client for a service that they offer. You need to ask yourself, is this person at the beginning stages of their business where we don't really need to qualify what leads are coming through our forms? Or is this a place where our client actually has more business than they know what to do with? And so we need to actually qualify our leads a little bit better than just hey, if you're interested, get in touch with me, right? So we do things like include, what's your budget for this project? Because in that question, you can then communicate, hey, if your budget is below $3,500, there's actually not even an option for you to move forward, right? Like, so you have, what's your budget? 3,500 to 7,000, 7,000 to 10,000, and then 10,000 plus, right? And so in that simple form question, you're communicating something and you're hoping to also keep people from contacting you that only have a budget of, $500 or so. The only thing that I would say about this and what I see people do incorrectly is, at no point are you trying to make it difficult for someone to fill out a form, right? Like there was this one gal that I was talking to, and she's like, I want to make it hard for people to get in touch with me. And it's like, well, that's not the right approach to it, right? If you have too much work, okay, that's not a volume problem. That's actually a pricing problem. Okay. If you feel like you've got too many inquiries and not enough time to sort through them all because you're so busy doing work, you actually just need to raise your prices and then go back to your form and say, instead of it being, starting price of 3,500 to 7,000, you're going to start 7,000 to 10,000 and then 10,000 to 20,000 and 20,000 plus. Right. And so you want to make sure you aren't making it difficult, but you are still being intentional in a way that someone can easily go, yes, this is for me, or no, this is not for me, because you don't want to waste your time and you don't want to waste other people's time. So when you consider where the business is at and approach it intentionally, you're gonna save yourself a lot of trouble, and you're gonna respect other people's time and the things that they are trying to do for themselves or their own businesses. So the third question is this: what information do I really need? And this is an interesting one. Expedia found out that one extra form field actually cost them $12 million. And when they removed it, they saw an increase in sales almost instantly. And so I think this is like a really good case study of how, if you're not super intentional about the fields and the form setup that you are doing on a website for yourself or for a client, it can actually end up being a big problem for your business. Now, obviously, small changes for a website like Expedia that probably has millions of users every single month, like that's going to compound over quite a few transactions, right? So I don't know what the percentage would be as far as the uptick in their sales and conversion rates, but $12 million is nothing to bat an eye at. Right, like if we could get maybe like a quarter of that in our business extra from taking off a form field, like I would do it, So anyway, so you need to ask yourself a question of like, if somebody's signing up for a freebie, do I really need to know their physical address, right? When someone's purchasing something, do I really need to know their telephone number? Users are getting much more hesitant to give away information. And so when I'm filling out a form and it asks me for something that, in my mind, that doesn't really make sense for the thing that I'm getting, there's instantly like a dissonance of like, I don't know if I should do this, right? And, maybe you don't have the intention of like, spamming these people's cell phones, but I don't know you, right? The user doesn't know you. You have to assume the worst when it comes to what you're asking of people, right? And so you have to say like, do I really need this? The more you ask for, the less likely people are willing to follow through all the way. So you want to make sure that you don't ask for a single thing more than what is really needed. There's an equation in conversion that it kind of plays into this, and I'll kind of go over it a little bit. And a lot of this is I could get into really in depth, but I'll try to keep it somewhat 30,000 foot view level. So conversion is a combination of a number of things. The first one is motivation, right? So how motivated is somebody to actually do this thing? And the motivation is more of the emotional side of things. And then there's the value of it. How valuable does this feel to me? And value has to do with, is this different than other options that I've looked at, via price point, via features, or via branding? And then the other part of it is friction. How much friction is there for me to actually follow through and become converted or purchase or sign up or whatever, right? And so the more form fields that you have, the more friction there is for there to be a conversion event, right? And so you have to determine how much friction do I want to create for this thing that I'm offering. And so, let's say you had a form that had 50 different inputs. Okay, when you're thinking about getting a free PDF on how to upscale your business, 50 inputs is a lot. But you take those 50 inputs and you say, instead of this free PDF, you get a free Ferrari. we would all do it, right? And so that's why the equation for conversion comes into play here. You have to get inside the mind of the user and say, how motivated are they? What's the value that I've offered, and then how much friction am I creating when they're signing up for this thing? So number 4 is what I'm offering worth the effort. So this goes into the motivation value part of things, and this is true of products that are being sold, but we as people are assigning a certain value number to our own email address and our phone numbers, right? People kind of intuitively put a price tag on that. And I think there was some research that said it's somewhere right around $15 to $25 if you're looking for like a hard number. So that means that in order for somebody to give you an email or a phone number, they have to feel like what they're getting is worth around $15 or $25. And so if they don't feel like what they're giving is worth what they're getting in return, then they won't actually go through, fill out the form. Obviously, this makes more sense when you're talking about a physical product that you're paying money for, or buy the product. So how do you make it how do you make it worth it to users? There's 2 ways to do that. The first way is to sell it. And I see this all the time where somebody says, sign up for my newsletter, but they leave no incentive, right? They tell me nothing that I'm going to get for signing up for the newsletter. At most, you'll see like, sign up for my newsletter to get hot takes every single week. It's like, well, that hot takes on what? Why? How has this improved someone else's life? You know? Yeah, exactly. I mean, there is something to be said. Phil just said, if you want to know, you got to sign up. There's something to be said about creating a little bit of secrecy and letting that be the motivation. But you know, try to figure out how to poise signing up for your newsletter in such a way that it becomes a no-brainer to the person that is then signing up for it. And then the second way to make it worth it is to focus on outcomes. And there's a few ways to focus on outcomes. The first one is tangible outcomes. So this would be things like, instead of saying inquire about our services, you say request a free proposal, right? So that the inquire about our services is kind of an ethereal idea. You know, ask us about what we do. You know, that's a conversation. That's not a physical thing. Request a free proposal. That seems like it has, like, you know, some malleability to it. Is that the right word? Tangibility to it. Yeah. Malleability. What is that? That's mushy. That's one of those ones where I was like trying to say a word that I thought would work and it just didn't. I do it all the time. So it's great that I've done it on a live stream. Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah, that kind of works then. Okay. Number 2, instant outcomes. So instead of request an audit, you would say get an instantly generated audit, right? Like make it seem instantaneous. So this would be, you know, instead of sign up for our newsletter to receive it weekly, say sign up for our newsletter and you'll get the first one in your box within seconds. Personalized outcomes. Instead of get our latest report, you say something like get a personalized report. So you make it seem really specific to them. And if we're talking about email marketing, this is where segmented audiences really helps you with open rates, with actually getting people to buy things. The more personalized you can get in the marketing that you're doing, the better. Number 5, do I look trustworthy? So something that you could easily do, especially on newsletters, is say how many people have signed up for the newsletter within the section that talks about signing up for the newsletter. So sign up and join 5,000 other people who are getting weekly emails from me, or 30,000 or whatever. Or take a screenshot of someone who has signed up for the newsletter and show people just how much they've loved getting your emails, right? You can't assume that that people trust you, because they just don't, right? Like, there is so much distrust on the internet, and for good reason. And so we have to look at this like, I have to earn trust from somebody that's about to hand over stuff to me. And then the last question that we want to ask, have I tried to think like a user? And in the web world, this is called UX, or user experience. So user experience is legitimately trying to get into the mind of the person that is doing something on a website or on a web app, right? And so as designers, we should always take a step back and ask ourselves, if I were a user, would I like filling out this form, right? That's UX summed up in its entirety, right? If I were the person that is doing this thing, would I like doing this thing? And then from there, you can figure out like what would I not like about it? What would I appreciate about it? What do I need to focus on more? Like, all of those things. And if you have questions about that, one of the best things that I found is actually just going to strangers and saying, hey, I'll give you a $5 Starbucks gift card in Starbucks, right? You meet somebody in Starbucks. I'll give you a $5 Starbucks gift card if you just fill out this form and I can ask you questions about it, right? I'm not going to email you. I'm not going to follow up. I just want to see how you use this form. And then you see really quickly where you were like, oh, I never imagined somebody trying to do this thing that you're trying to do. And so now I'm going to go back and make some changes. So, but even outside of user testing, there's a few things we know just from common practice and from some other folks who have done usability testing. So here's a few things to keep in mind when it comes to forms specifically. Single columns, even on desktop, even if it's a really long form, are almost always have more conversion than forms that have multiple columns. So even when it comes to like first, last name, keep that on one column, right? Name, first, underneath, last, right? Excuse me. Another one is avoid drop downs at all costs. Drop downs are very inefficient ways to get information, okay? And unless you just have a list of hundreds of options, right? So we're talking about what country are you from, right? You don't really want to do a drop down, okay? And then if you do have a drop down, make sure that there's type of autofill functionality to it. So when you start typing UN, it comes up with United States or United Arab or whatever it is, right? So that you're trying to guess, so that there's less of an effort that somebody has to make in order to, scroll through a list of hundreds of countries or states or whatever it is. Use invisible captchas. So I know it's tough to get spam. It's a lot of work to filter through, spam emails and all that kind of stuff. But if we're thinking about this from the user perspective, we should be the ones taking on the weight of the spam, right? Not the users. And so there's all sorts of studies that have shown that if there is a CAPTCHA form to fill out on a form, it drops your conversion like drastically. I can't remember the specific number, but I know it's at least by half, because people don't like doing them. Oftentimes people make mistakes filling out CAPTCHA forms. So there are some great options with invisible CAPTCHAs. And there are some other things that you can do, like if somebody's signing up for an email newsletter, having them confirm their email is a much better way of them filtering out spam, and it puts less responsibility on the weight of the users. Number 4, don't forget design, right? Good design goes a long way when it comes to people filling out a form, right? If it looks enticing, they're much more likely to fill it out. Use multi-step forms. This is something that comes from, there's a professor, his name's Robert Cialdini. He wrote the book Persuasion and Persuasion, but he talks about 7 principles of persuasion, and one of those principles is consistency. And so people are much more likely to donate money if, instead of the first question being, hey, will you donate some money to this charity, you ask them, are you a generous person? It goes up by 50%, I think, from if they just say, would you be willing to donate money to this organization, versus, hey, do you consider yourself a generous person? Oh, you do. Would you consider giving money to this organization? And so what happens with forms is, once somebody has committed, right, they've given you their first name, which is typically what you want to ask for, something easy that's not like, what types of medications are you taking? They're much more willing to go, oh, okay, there's only a few more to get to the very end of this, because they want to stay consistent with what they've already started with. Use big submit buttons. So this is something I see a lot. You want your buttons to be at least as big as the input fields that are on the form itself. As JT often says, he likes big buttons, and he cannot lie. So make sure that you're doing that. So I figured from this is all the 30,000 foot view. I figured we'd go down and we'd set up a few forms, both on Show It, and one of my favorite form builders for WordPress is Gravity Forms. It costs a little bit of money every year to keep updates on the plugin, but in my opinion, if this is something that is really important to you, then it's certainly worth it. When you're talking about different email service providers, there could be a dozen that we could pick from. Most of them have some like pretty pre-cut forms for people to fill out, but you can obviously go through their software and then get like an embed code. So I figure we do that unless we have any questions. Okay.
All right. We have Michaela Metzler is asking, how do you add invisible CAPTCHA on a Show It form?
Yes. Well, the answer is that I don't believe you can. So there might be some other ways. CAPTCHA is the thing you have to sign up for. And so there might be a way to embed some CAPTCHA code onto a page. I haven't looked into it. But
we don't have high reports of spam.
Yeah.
You can't prevent people from actually filling out a form. The idea with CAPTCHA is it's catching automated filling out some forms.
Right.
And we don't have any widespread report of that on our network for Show It forms and stuff. So our team's done a pretty good job of preventing that from being able to be done. So, yeah.
And there's all sorts of things that are being made these days where it's not necessarily spam as much as it is like they have a program that is individually writing emails and individually sending emails from a legit account and sending it to you. So there's some things, like if you're going to be on the internet, it's just going to happen.
Yeah, there's some things that would get past CAPTCHA anyways. And then there's another question, is there a way to have autofill capability on Show It forms?
Yes. The answer is no. No, there's not a way to do that.
Yes, there's not a way right now.
Yes, I understand the question. So that's the forms on Show It are going to be much more basic contact forms. When you want to start doing much more lead gen type stuff, that's when I would say going to places like Gravity Forms. Honeybooks has some great form options, would be a good thing to look at. I can say that we're in the process of actually doing some really cool stuff with our forms. And so if you want to know more about that, comment on this event and someone will get back to you. Okay, you have to comment.
Field would like to know more. We do have one other question that popped up is, does Gravity Forms offer multi-step forms?
They do.
They do.
Yeah. And I was going to show that.
Perfect.
in this right now.
And I have a question about something you said earlier about not asking for too much information.
Yeah.
So one of the most frustrating things from somebody who has these forms on their site is when somebody misspells their email address or they leave an incomplete phone number. Like, how do we
Sure.
make sure that we have the proper contact information
Sure.
without asking for too much? So that's normally why we have like, hey, email address and
Sure.
phone number.
Yeah, I mean, that in my mind, that would be a legitimate reason to ask for multiple forms of contact, because you have experience of like people accidentally, mistype a number or misspell. There's some forms will do verification, like instant inline verification, and so. Right, exactly. And so you could look at something like that. That's going to be pretty elementary. And like instead of pressing .com, they do .con, and so they could still misspell their actual email, and you'd still be up a creek for getting in touch with them. But yeah, I think that's a legitimate reason to say, like, and it might be like, hey, we often sometimes get people who misspell their emails. That's why we ask for this. So just to clarify, like, we're not going to spam you in this instance, So cool. All right, let's look at setting up a form on Show It. So I am going to create a new canvas and do it from scratch. So forms in the Show It world all live within Canvas views. So if you've never created a Canvas view, I create a new canvas, and we'll call this form test. We're going to come over here, add a Canvas view, and we'll call this form input. Okay, let me make sure. That's not it. There we go. Window. Okay. Jefferson, are you seeing it now? You know. There I am. There I am. There I am. Okay, where did we go? Okay, so in case you weren't able to catch that, I created a blank canvas, called it Form Test. All of forms within Show It live within Canvas View. And so I created a Canvas View by clicking these three dots here, Add Canvas View. I'm going to add another one, and instead of this being Form Input, I'll be Form Submit Result. So in the first canvas, we add all of the fields that we want people to fill out. And the way that we do that is with our text elements. And so I'm going to create just a simple form of name, email, message, right? Like that is it. Okay. So we'll call this name, and then email, and then don't want that. We'll make this message. Okay. So how do I get these to all act like input fields? Well, I go over to text properties, and I click this and under contact form, enable input. And then you have the option of required, in subject, and then reply to, and then also label. Label is going to be much more for like a backend kind of thing. And so the label will show within your email or within our contact service that we have through your account as well. And so it's always good just to name it. It's good HTML practice too. You don't ever want to leave a label unlabeled. So we'll say that this is name. One thing that I would say about required or not required, in all the tests that they have done, making a field unrequired actually decreases the amount of people that submit that form. And so you don't ever really want to put a non-required field. And that's where that Expedia case study came in from. There was a field that said company. And it was right above bank information for, or like, debit card information for the person filling out the form. And so people were thinking that company meant the name of the bank that their debit card was attached to. And so then down the line, they'd be like, well, you need my address or you need my bank's address. And so it just created a lot of confusion for them. And so if it's not required, just don't even ask for it. So we're going to do that again. And we're going to call this email. And then for email, we want to hit reply to, because this will be when you get the email in your inbox, when you hit reply, it'll go straight back to this email. And then message will do the same thing, required, and then message. If you want to, you can come through and add a subject to be in the subject line. I don't really prefer doing that because, again, it's one of the things that I wouldn't really require. And it's one of those things where it's like, if I'm looking for the minimal amount of things that somebody would have to fill out in order for me to actually get back in touch with them like that, this wouldn't be one of those things. They're going to tell me what it's about within the message. Yeah. Yeah. So JT was saying he suggests the name field because then it appears as a different thread in your inbox. Yeah. Oh, I see. So putting this in the subject. Yeah, got it. Yeah. No, that's a great idea. Okay, so a few things just for the design of it. Like if somebody came to this, it's not super intuitive that this is actually a field, right? Because it just looks like an invisible text box. So we're going to create some rectangles and make these actually look like fields. So I'm going to do that. We're going to bring that under here. And then I'm going to take this one, copy and paste it, and we're going to make it smaller. Put that under there. One of my big pet peeves when it comes to forms, and maybe this is just something I need to get over, I dislike it when the field itself is like much smaller than the rectangle that it looks like the field is in. And just what happens is like sometimes it can go up here and then like all of the text is up at the very top versus being centered in the rectangle. It's just not a great design. So something that I do is I try to leave just a tad bit of space on the sides and on the top and the bottom of the form field. And then if you want to get this in the middle, rather than pulling this down here, I just go over to line height and I just bring it down that way. And the same is true for buttons. You don't want to have a button that has a very small window to click on because people are going to click all around it and be like, why isn't this button working? Well, it's because the button itself, the submit line, is the only thing that was made clickable. So that's just a little bit of, I think, user experience that I think is worth the effort. Okay, so we'll do this one last thing for this field here. And I'm just going to make this the same size, bring that over, and then copy that. So I did a special copy and a special paste. So I just hit email, did Command C or Windows C or whatever, Control C. And then if you do Command Shift V, it'll copy the formatting of or it'll paste the formatting of what you copied over to whatever text element you've pasted to. So it's another fun thing. So, all right, so we're looking pretty good. The only other thing that we need to add here is a submit button. So I'm going to do that by creating a rectangle. And we want our submit button to be just as big as our form fields. So we'll do that. Let's bring that over. As far as color goes of your submit button, the only thing that you want to make sure is that there's a color contrast between whatever the form fields are and whatever the submit button it is. It doesn't need to be a specific color. I know there's a lot of stuff out there online about red converting more than blue or whatever. I think it's all bogus. I think the majority of the issue should be with, does this stand out as a button? And in our instance, like this big black rectangle, I think does that just fine. So we're going to create a paragraph, and I'm going to turn it white so we can see it. And then I will bring it up here and over here. And then I'm going to do the same thing that I did by messing with the line height to bring it in the center. Okay, so now we want to make sure that Show It knows this is a submit button. And so we're going to do click actions, actually. Come over here, and it will be add action. Thank you. No. Right. Canvas. This, thank you. View 2, submit contact form. See, this is actually why we have people come and join us for Lunch and Learn, so that I can make sure that I do it correctly. So, all right, I'm gonna center this up. Okay, so just to go through it one more time, in case that was confusing to everybody. So we're gonna go to Canvas, this Canvas, Canvas View 2, and then it's going to submit contact form. And then I don't like all this scroll to canvas unless you have a really long form. It would be nice for it to scroll back up to see the message. But for the most part, I think with simple forms like this, you're not going to need much. All right, so let's go to this. And then we're just going to add some paragraph and say, thank you so much. Your email has been submitted. And then I always like leaving a little bit of a promise. You'll hear from us in 2 business days. Minimum. Probably sooner. Maybe. All right, that's as non-committal as I can get. Let me center this up here, and there you go. So this is a Show It form in all its glory. Any questions online? Paragraph the email. Oh, right. Yes. It would. Yeah, it just said paragraph. It's just paragraph. To paragraph. Amazing. Cool. Should we look at a gravity form? Okay. All right. So again, gravity forms, they cost a little bit of money. They have pricing tiers, and it's not a free plugin on the WordPress repository. So you have to download it from the Gravity Forms website. But the basic license plan, if you've got one person, is like $59 a year. If you want... Yes, thank you, JT. This requires the WordPress advanced blog. This isn't something that comes in our basic blog tier. So if you are a web designer and you find yourself having clients who like using Gravity Forms, it might be worth it to look into getting the Elite license, because it's an unlimited amount of websites. So it could be something that you offer to clients as a free resource that might make you look better than other people. So I've done a multi-step form here. just to show you what it looks like. But it's a very simple form, first name, and then something I really like doing when it comes to like 3 or 4 radio button options is to add images next to the text itself, because we just know that people process images way faster than they're going to process text. And so you like with this, you might not even have to use the text itself. You could just use the dollar signs. I know this is kind of unclear, but you could just use the dollar signs to say where my budget is. So I'm a big spender, so I'm going to go up here, and then let's do Chris at showit.com, and then it goes through and bam. Okay, so if I were to add a new form, they have a whole bunch of different options to select from. Some of them are paid templates, so you have to actually purchase them. But we'll start with a blank one. So this will be a multi-step 2. Yep. All right, so we're going to create a blank form. And then you have standard fields right here. Then you have advanced fields, which is just a whole bunch of options. And then post fields would be different things from like WordPress posts. So your blog title or like copy or the body content of a post. So don't know why you would need that, but maybe some people do. Pricing fields as well. So this is going to be a simple one. So we're just going to do a single line of text, and we're going to change this over here to be name. All right. And then if you want it to be a multi-step form, you actually have to add this page, right? So what's happening is it's creating a new page for every single step of the form itself. So it's good to know, like you want as little refresh as possible on the browser. And so they do have other forms that do all of the multi-step by other means other than a refresh. Like there's Ajax forms and things like that that'll do it better way. But this is still good. The only thing I would say is, do at least 2 or 3 questions if you've got like 10 questions on a multi-step form. So it's not just like, here's my name, enter, refresh, here's my email, enter, refresh, right? So it seems a little bit more worth it than just like, oh man, this is taking forever. Type form is another thing that we've used. That's an embeddable contact form that won't have a refresh. It'll just go instantly to the next question. And that's embeddable, so you could use it within a static show it page as well. So, all right, so I've got my page break. I'm going to put an email under here. And then I'm going to add one more page break, and I'm going to do a paragraph text. So this will be my message. Field label is message. So, and then that is all looking good. So I'm going to click Save Form. And then over here on this Forms page, I'm just going to come in and let's go ahead and let's see if this will do that. Oh, here we go. So now we can see there's 2 options. There's the multi-step form that I created at first, and then there's multi-step 2. And so you see that it changed multi-step 2. Yep. So, and then whenever somebody fills out this form on Gravity Form itself, you can see the entries. So, let's say you've got somebody who you don't want them to have access to their email, or maybe if you're working with a client, they don't want to give you access to the email that's the form is being submitted through, but they want you to check on some of the entries. Like this would be where you do that. But it also sends it to whatever email is on file within the WordPress admin area as well. So that's it. It's all pretty simple. Gravity Forms is really big, so there's a ton of help online if you have questions or want to know how to do things. That's where I figured out how to do the images and the radio button, because that's not automatically available. You have to add a little code, or there's extra plugins that you can install to do it, to where you don't have to add a little bit of code on that. So any other questions before we sign off on this Lunch and Learn? Okay. Okay. Cool. Well, I think the main thing about all this, if I could boil it down, is just be intentional whenever you're setting up forms, and think through the process of what it is that you need, and how would a complete stranger look at filling out this form. Would this be something that they would be willing to do? Would they be hesitant to do? And then why or why not? Especially when it comes to things like purchasing. So there's even more psychology that goes into somebody handing off value of dollar bills, right? There's the handing off of value of like something that's connected to me, like an email address, which, there's still some value in that people kind of associate a monetary value to. But man, when people start giving away their money, it's just a whole nother ball of wax, and you've got to be even more intentional and think about the process. Make sure you test. So I'd also say, before you hand off a site to a client, make sure you do some dummy emails. I have a client who is in the middle of doing some tests on their emails, and then you can just see, look at all these email submissions just to make sure that it's working. I mean, I have at least like 50 of these. So you've just got to be sure, because the worst thing that could happen is to set up a lead generation form and then it not to actually send you emails, right? That would be a very bad day. So cool. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We are going to have a Lunch and Learn for the rest of the year. And so we will see you next year. But again, this will live on into perpetuity. As always, feel free to reach out to us. If you want to hear more information about some new fun stuff that we've got coming up with forms, just put your information or contact me on this event, and we'll get back in touch with you. So appreciate y'all, and we'll see you very soon.